Here we go. Welcome, folks, to this Wednesday evening session. Just a quick reminder that, at least for the duration of the current immersion we're in, which we're almost doing every week, we won't be doing Saturday morning class, at least till about mid-December.
Oh.
And then we'll pick it up again. So no Saturday classes from here, October, November, and then half of December.
Okay.
And then we'll pick it up. And I'll send out emails to that effect for sure. We wanted to look more about the body that Jesus talks about a lot in the entire course, close to 1,000 times. And one of the chapters he really focuses on it is chapter 18. Will be on page 390 in the text. It's section 8. In a couple paragraphs from the section called The Little Garden. In section 6, 7, and 8, the entire chapter is called Passing of the Dream, but it could certainly have been called Passing of the Dream of the Body, because he really focuses on the body as our dream, as our way of putting a fence around our awareness of ourselves as a mind, and then kind of limiting it to that experience of being trapped inside a body. So in paragraph 1, he says, "It is only the awareness of the body that makes love seem limited." Only the awareness of the body. The buck stops here at the body. The ego pretending it's a body, and that's where we think we are. That's where we have to start. But that certainly makes love seem limited, fenced in. He'll go on to describe. For the body is a limit on love. The belief in limited love was its origin, meaning it came from the tiny mad idea that we could actually limit ourselves, cut ourselves off from God, and be a separate autonomous being. And that made up, make-believe limit on love was the origin of our ultimate belief that we're a body. And it was made to limit the unlimited. Think not that this is merely allegorical, for it was made to limit you. Can you, who see yourself within a body, know yourself as an idea? It takes us back to chapter 5, where he really talks about we're really an idea in the mind of God. Everything you recognize, you identify with externals, something outside yourself, outside our true self as the Son of God. You cannot even think of God without a body, or in some form you think you recognize. The body cannot know. And here he's talking about the experience of knowing in the Course is that experience of oneness, whatever that experience is in level 1 in heaven. And while you limit your awareness to the body's tiny senses, you cannot see the grandeur that surrounds you. God cannot come into a body, nor can you join him there. Limits on love, i.e. bodies, will always seem to shut God out and keep you apart from him. The body is a tiny fence around a little part of a glorious and complete idea that we all are, collectively one Son of God. The body is a tiny fence, and that echoes what he says later in What is the Body? The body is a tiny fence that we built to keep ourselves fenced in. So the body draws a circle infinitely small around a very little segment of heaven, splintered from the whole, proclaiming that within the body is your kingdom, where God can enter not. Later on, he calls us what he calls little tiny kingdoms. Seemingly self-autonomous kingdoms in and of themselves. And the section before this, and we're kind of going backwards to kind of build into ultimately looking at section 6, but section 7 on page 388, first paragraphs there, he's really nailing how the idea of the body keeps us trapped. And section 7, I need do nothing. You still have too much faith in the body as a source of strength. What plans do you make that just do not involve its comfort or protection or enjoyment in some way? This makes the body an end and not a means in your interpretation, and this always means you still find sin attractive. So this tiny mad idea of sin in the mind, in this middle level of experience between our true experience in heaven and our seeming experience in the world, that tiny mad idea of sin gets projected on the poor body. The separation, the isolation, the pain, the heart, etc. And that always means that internally, within our minds, we still find sin attractive if we're identifying with a body. No one accepts atonement for himself who still accepts sin as his goal. No one accepts atonement for himself who still accepts himself as a body. I mean, that's what he was just saying in the previous sentence.
Yep.
And he goes on. You have thus not met your one responsibility of accepting atonement for yourself. Starting with accepting you're not a body, you're free, you're still as God remembers you.
Somehow that reminds me of that is like a poster or something. Say, you just had one task, and that was
and you blew it.
right. Yeah. He's not fomenting guilt, but
no.
If he was, that would be the message, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Because he goes on, atonement cannot be welcomed by those who prefer pain and destruction by identifying with a body. It goes back to that whole thing when I was talking about death. If you think you can hurt somebody, you think you can die. If you think you can be hurt, you're a thing that can die. You're a body.
Seems like it all comes back to identification and identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah. Who or what?
Remember when we were saying, who do you think you are anyway? Of course you think you're, what you think you are. Oops.
And then it goes back to what Bruce was saying about the one task. This is the one thing that you have never done. You've never become a body. You have not utterly. Oh, and then he goes on, because you have never forgotten that you actually believe you're a body. Well, a couple holy instances here and there is what he's really going for here.
Yeah, brief respite, right?
Yeah, refresh.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one thing you have never done. You have not utterly forgotten the body. It has perhaps faded at times from your sight, but it has not yet completely disappeared. He's being nice. You are not asked to let this happen for more than an instant, yet it is in this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. So that's what he's trying to get us to do, is to be willing to have this instant. And the whole section previous to this is beyond the body. Section 6 is called Beyond the Body, so that we can let go of that body identification and actually have an experience of what he's talking about here. An experience of the atonement. And yet it is this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. You're not asked to let this happen for more than an instant, yet it is in this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. Line 4. Afterwards you will see the body again, but never quite the same way. And every instant that you spend without awareness of the body gives you a different view of it when you seemingly come back to it. At no single instant does the body exist at all. Oh yeah? Let me tell you.
There's actually some interesting biological science about that. Is that the nerve impressions that we get that give us the sense of being in a body are actually delayed a few microseconds or whatever from the so-called physical experience. So anyway, there was something about that I read a few years ago that's kind of like, wow, it kind of corroborates this, is that even within the level of form, it has to be that propaganda system neurologically and biologically has to keep feeding this erroneous data to us to keep convincing us that this big propaganda machine that, okay, yeah, you're this body thing, and you better
It's so,
believe it, you know.
it's so funny. I can leave the body for a while. I mean, by that I mean forget about it completely.
Right.
But it's always there waiting for me. It's like a pet, like a house pet, or a cat.
Or a stalker.
Or a stalker. It's always there waiting.
It wags its tail when you come back.
It's hysterical.
Oh, she came home. She came
I
home.
know. It's like, what are you doing here?
Hi, Jennifer. Good morning.
Jennifer.
We're on page 388 in the text, and we're making fun of our bodies or our identification with the body.
388.
388 in
Yes.
the text. So it says at no single instant does the body exist at all. It is always remembered or anticipated. What Bruce was saying, it's like 3-second delay before our senses compute what we thought we saw or thought we heard. And in this case, he's saying this in general. Everything we think about the body is more than a 3-second delay. It's a totally in the past delay of everything we think we've experienced in the past. It is always remembered or anticipated. It's either the image of the body is coming from the past or it's coming from some kind of concern we have about the future, but it's never experienced just now. Only its past and future make it seem real. Time controls the body entirely, for sin is never wholly in the present. So it goes back to the old, what was his name? Ram Dass thing about being in the here and now. In the here and now, there is no body. There is no here. There's just oneness. So, and that's what he's trying to get us to do in this experience of beyond the body. So, as an opening meditation, we'll look at actually it's today's lesson, if you're working them consecutively since the beginning of the year. Lesson 268, it's on page 429 in the workbook. And these all these lessons refer back to what is the body, where he talked about the body as a fence. And the body moving from the idea of a body fencing us in, keeping us from awareness of our true identity, to allowing the Holy Spirit to use the body so we have a different experience. And that's what he's asking for here. Let all things be exactly as they are, including bodies. Let the bodies be as they are, the nothingness from which they came from. I mean, they're puppets, for God's sake. Stop trying to make them into a big deal. And then let our true self in creation be exactly as it is, our true identity, our true reality. And he goes on to say, let me not distort God's creation into, is not real flattering here, into sickly forms, bodies that can be sick, bodies that seem to die. And then he goes on, so, and then it's the two-step process in line 3. Let me be willing first to withdraw my wishes, to see my brother as guilty, to see my brother as responsible, and then allow that to be replaced with an awareness of our true identity as God created it. And let it be as you created it. Let my brother's identity be as you created it. Let my identity be as you created it. So it's really the first 2 steps of forgiveness in line 3. So Lynn, you want to read lesson 268 and we'll get quiet for a little bit. And yes, you have to unmute.
Unmute myself, and there I am.
There you are.
All right. Let all things be exactly as they are. I just feel such an incredible relief in just saying that it would be safe to let all things be exactly as they are, that I wouldn't have to change a single iota. Because obviously, if I'm a critic, I'm going to have to change something, right? Let me not be your critic, Lord, today, and judge against you. Let me not attempt to interfere with your creation and distort it into sickly forms. Let me be willing to withdraw my wishes from its unity and thus to let it be as you created it. For thus will I be able to recognize myself as you created me. In love I was created, and in love will I remain forever. What can frighten me when I let all things be exactly as they are? Let not our sight be blasphemous today, nor let our ears attend to lying tongues. Only reality is free of pain. Only reality is free of loss. Only reality is wholly safe. And it is only this I seek today.
And gently, I've gotten to the point where I don't want to say come back anymore. Stay where you're at, damn it. It's interesting. There's not a lot of places where he uses the word blasphemy, but I mean, certainly historically, we think of blasphemy as the ultimate sin. People get thrown out of the church because they were blasphemous, or worse, burned at the stake. But blasphemy is basically just simply one way of describing it is denying God, and certainly denying ourselves the sonship that we are. And the good news about blasphemy from the Course's point of view is just a mistake. It's not a mortal sin where you're going to burn in hell forever. You just screwed up and made a mistake of believing something else. So let not our sight be blasphemous today. Go against God, deny our true identity as God's one Son. And not let our ears attend to lying tongues, the lying tongue of the ego, the lying tongues of sin, guilt, and fear. Only reality, our true reality as one Son of God is free of pain. Only that reality is free of loss. Only that reality is wholly safe. If we let all things be exactly as they are, as who we are.
I was thinking that I had that the only moment in which we can realize reality is now. This is it. I mean, reality can't be in the future, and it can't be in the past. It can't be somewhere else. It can only be appreciated and recognized now.
And that was certainly what he was pointing out in that section on the little garden, that the way we get to the little garden inside is in the now, is to allow that to happen now. Bruce, you're going to say something?
Yeah, somehow, yeah. When you mentioned it, which I was recognizing too, that the word blasphemy and blasphemous doesn't appear much in the Course. It seems like that could be another example of Jesus meeting us where we think we're at, using terms that we've tormented ourselves with, by juxtaposing that word with the craziness of the whole thought system of sin, guilt, and fear, so that we can recognize it as, from his perspective, it's just laughably silly. But because we think it's a big deal, we would probably accuse ourselves of being blasphemous, thinking that something, really awful had happened, but nothing happened in truth. But because that's where we think we're at, he's saying, well, here's where you're condemning yourself. And I don't know, it just kind of seemed like it could be a way to use our own, the own craziness of the ego thinking in a parody of the ego, to say, this is silly. This is just silly that you've made such a big deal out of this little infinitesimal fence, and all of its stuff.
And certainly the tiny mad idea of separation could have been called the tiny mad idea of blasphemy.
Yeah.
The belief that we could actually go against God and separate and disconnect and attack him, et cetera, yeah. And the corresponding guilt with blasphemy, even historically, is horrific. I mean, you're guilty of doing the worst sin ever. Well, that's what we told ourselves when we thought we left heaven. You're guilty of the worst sin ever. You went against God. Of course, that guilt has to be projected out onto a whole bunch of puppets in form. So we get to diffuse all that guilt into something that we think we can manage a little bit anyway.
Right. Exactly.
I was just wondering if, I'm speaking metaphorically here, but if Jesus ever gets sick of meeting us where we think we are. I mean, come on, for God's sakes. Couldn't we go where he is? Couldn't we at least try it?
Hey, he got sick of me whining about section 6, the section we're going to do now, because I didn't understand it.
It was
and I
terrible.
refused to ask him what it meant. He's like, get away
he's
from
just
me.
laughing all the time.
He's got to be laughing. I mean, we are the most morose, difficult, we just want to make everything hard. And he's saying,
we are doing best sitcom, best drama for him every second.
Every second. This is over. I just keep hearing it in my ears. This is over. Time and space is over.
We're just doing this to make him chuckle, is what it is.
Why?
We don't really take it seriously. Neither does he.
The dreadful, most horrific instant was corrected, and it is over. And it's of no concern or value or interest right now. Right now. It's like, it's not here now. It's over, How can we be here in this moment when we're still dealing with this horrible moment? Oh, God.
Page,
hysterical.
Page 384, and it'll
All right.
break down what we've been talking about. 384 in the text, beyond the body. So we're trying to have an experience of what he's talking about in this here and now thing. What it means to go to the little garden inside and just be okay there without bringing all these bodies with us. Yeah. Bruce, you want to read paragraph 1 and 2, please? Bruce, we can't hear you for some reason. Oh, maybe Bruce is talking to somebody.
Oh, I bet he's on the phone.
Ah, that's what's going on. He's back.
Here he comes.
That messed me up.
I know.
My sister just called with this. My mom had a minor stroke today, so I've been following that.
Oh.
So the whole topic of body stuff has been up for me this week, both for family as well as I've had some medical appointments myself, and just kind of noticing that. So I've been using that as an opportunity to, when I have these conversations, to remember that we're all spirit, and just be normal and kind and do the normal things, but also remember that behind that's the spirit. So,
Lynn got her report on her bone density, her bag of bones density today.
yeah.
I'm just a bag of bones. That's just the way of it.
I think you may be more than that. We might be selling ourselves short with that assessment.
I think
just a little, huh?
I sat there and I read the medical report and I'm like, this really makes no sense at all. It really makes no sense.
Well, isn't our bone density infinitely negligible? Because if matter is mostly empty space, then no matter what you put in it, it's still mostly empty space, right?
Right. And the problem is when it gets to register on the tests that they do, that your bones are porous, which is meaning they're getting more like airy, like they're disappearing. Like that's the crisis.
Well, that sounds like that's a good thing.
That's what I thought. Oh dear.
So, Bruce, you want to read paragraph 1?
Sure.
On page 384, please.
Sure, you bet. Beyond the body, perfect. There is nothing outside you. This is what you must ultimately learn, for it is the realization that the kingdom of heaven is restored to you. For God created only this, and he did not depart from it, nor leave it separate from himself. The kingdom of heaven is the dwelling place of the Son of God, who left not his Father and dwells not apart from him. Heaven is not a place nor a condition. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else, nothing outside this oneness, and nothing else within.
So,
if that isn't a succinct description of pure non-duality, I don't know what is. Yeah.
And then we decide not to believe that or not accept that as our reality. So you want to go on with paragraph 2?
Sure.
And then the trouble we get into?
The mischief and the shenanigans. Huh? Yeah. What could God give but knowledge of himself? What else is there to give? The belief that you could give and get something else, something outside yourself, has cost you the awareness of heaven and of your identity. And you have done a stranger thing than you yet realize. You have displaced your guilt to your body from your mind. Yet a body cannot be guilty, for it can do nothing of itself. You who think you hate your body deceive yourself. You hate your mind, for guilt has entered into it, and it would remain separate from your brothers, which it cannot do. Another example of the unconscious but unfounded guilt that the Holy Spirit keeps saying, let's make it conscious first, and then we'll together see that it's unfounded.
I think it was Groucho Marx kind of paraphrased that paragraph and said, I wouldn't belong to a club that would have me.
Yeah, I was almost like that one.
What? You'll have me? No, I don't want to be part of your group.
That's so funny.
I mean, and if I was as hard on my friends as I am on myself, I would never have any friends. People get that right away. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're really hard on this poor little body thing puppet.
Did he say that second quote too?
I don't know, but I thought it went along with the first one.
It does very much. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
He might have. He should have.
The craziness, the ego.
Yeah.
Almost seems like something Mark Twain might have said too. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's this underlying self-hatred going on all the time where we're constantly beating ourselves up because we didn't do it right. We didn't do enough. We did too much. We just beat ourselves up for everything. So it looks like we hate our body for what the body did or didn't do. But we really hate, what's really going on is the hatred is being projected on the poor body, and the guilt's being projected on the poor body from the mind, which is what Lynn was pointing out to me in the next paragraph. Lynn, that's your paragraph. You should read that one. Paragraph 3.
Minds are joined. Bodies are not. Only by assigning to the mind the properties of the body, which is limited and defined and has boundaries and borders and definitions, only by assigning to the mind the properties of the body does separation even seem to be possible. And it is mind that seems to be fragmented and private and alone. Now, once you've done that, its guilt, which keeps it separate, is projected to the body, which suffers and dies because it is attacked to hold the separation in the mind and let it not know its identity, the identity of the mind, to keep secret from us the identity of the mind, and that it is one with all creation. It is one, it is whole, it is unified. Mind, capital M, mind cannot attack, but it can make fantasies and direct the body to act them out. It is never what the body does that seems to satisfy. Unless the mind believes the body is actually acting out its fantasies, it will attack the body by increasing the projection of its guilt upon it. God, what a drama. Unbelievable.
So I was thinking about, we have the inner fantasies of sin, guilt, and fear that's going on inside our one decision maker, aligning itself with the ego, having the ego as its teacher, and the ego is telling the decision maker, we're telling ourselves really, identified as an ego, this fantasy of sin, guilt, and fear that we've actually committed blasphemy. We've gone against God. We're guilty for doing that. The guilt of blasphemy again. And in this one puppeteer is all this story going down, and then rather than ask the other teacher in the mind for help to let that tragedy, that fantastical story of sin, guilt, and fear go, all those fantasies, we project that onto all these poor puppets in the world, and now we believe we're each of these puppets, and the pain and the tragedy and the horror we're feeling is because puppets do terrible things to other puppets. Whether the puppet's a germ or it's another body, I am so vulnerable. And that's the way I take all this guilt for having committed blasphemy here, and I put it on this poor puppet, and I say, no, it's a vulnerable thing subject to all kinds of horrendous things, disease and all the way up to being murdered by another puppet. But the gist of it is, this keeps me so focused here that I never realize and never even begin to acknowledge that all the pain and guilt I'm feeling is from hanging on to this fantasy, this story of sin, guilt, and fear in my mind. And then that gets projected on all these poor puppets. So I get to maintain the story, but now it's not my fault. It's what this other puppet or germ or disease or human being or whatever it is I'm calling the puppet is attacking me and robbing me of peace, making me feel like I'm in pain. So we forget we have a mind. The two purposes for leaving the mind and doing all this puppet show down here is I forget I have a mind. I forget the fantasy started here and believing I could blaspheme. And then it gets all projected down here, so I forget I have a mind, and it's not my fault anymore. It's the other puppets in the puppet show. It's their fault for causing me pain. Those are always the two big reasons for doing this mess in the first place.
My God, I just got that. That's why we do. We kill our own puppet, life after life after life after life, to put the death on the puppet and then keep killing it to preserve the guilt in the mind, to keep from giving up the story of death. I mean, Jesus tells us over and over again, there is no death. Death is, you made it up, you believe in it, and you could let the dead be gone and buried now because it's over. That whole thing is over. And look at how we keep insisting that the puppets must die.
And how many puppets are on the planet now? Is it about 7 billion or something?
Yeah, we're going to kill them all.
So, I mean,
That's just the human variety.
what's the big deal if one of these little puppets die? He's got, 6 other billion puppets to play with. And, eventually we'll make up a few more puppets to keep the show going. I mean, we talk about this like like Tim has a mind. No, the mind has Tim. Tim's just the puppet in the mind's puppet show. It's just, there's no, yeah. We're just all a little puppet.
It even shows up on your chart on your chart behind you, because sometimes depending on where you're sitting, it says Tim and Spa. So first time in space.
Oh, that's good. Uh-oh.
So you got the space-time jacuzzi going there.
Yeah, I'm a little egocentric. It's just Tim's up there. That's it. There's a Tim in Baltimore where I came from.
Oh, okay.
Tim Moore. There's a whole bunch of Tims out there. It's my fault. Jennifer, are you awake yet? You look a little sleepy.
I'm very stressed out and distracted at the
Oh.
moment, and that's why I have this this coming, and that I was so stressed out about what happened now, and I kind of like have the strong voice say I will let go what I'm doing and like stop fighting whatever is there so I can be peaceful again. That's what I was thinking. And suddenly I realized it's such a trick. Like I was thinking that if I don't do this, I will be peace again. It's just so funny. It's like, this is all happened because I wasn't peaceful in the first place. And then like that was so tricky, and I almost didn't notice.
Very good. Yes. Yeah. It came from you instead of externally.
Yes.
Yep. You did this to yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
It was so easy, so easily. We just have thinking that way without question.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's quick. It's so quick. We can project like that. So quick to get rid of it. Guilt.
And it's
very
so
good.
easy, so easily we think if we do this or don't do, then that's what matters, what we do.
Right.
Yeah, and I was thinking it has to be quick or we would wake up. I mean, the projection has to be almost seemingly immediate. Otherwise, we'd let it go in a heartbeat. He says that if you realized, the whole thing was a guilt maintenance program, we'd let it go.
That's a really, I never thought of it quite that way, Tim. That's really helpful, because it's sort of like if you could watch the projection of guilt in slow motion and see this giant, delivery mechanism, this giant machinery of the mind saying, okay, I'm going to take this unconscious guilt that's not real, but I think it is because I believed I broke perfect oneness somehow and shattered it into a gazillion pieces. So because I still believe that, I'm going to, is quicker than I can, a blink of an eye, I'm going to project it onto my body and the rest of the universe, so-called universe, so that I don't even notice the mechanism. But if we could kind of like see it in super slow motion, we'd see the whole thing being fabricated, and we see this guilt being, packaged and reformed into the world. And it's like, wait a minute, Well, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Back that up. Let's watch that in slow-mo again. I don't want to be doing that. Game over. Exactly. Yeah.
Bruce, lately, I know everybody knows because I've been ranting about the acceptance of the atonement. But really, truly, when you're totally willing to say that, you start to see all of those times. You start to really see it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I have a choice here. Right now, I have a choice here.
Right.
And I'm not going to do it. Just like Jennifer was just saying,
Yeah.
I see I have a choice now, and I'm not going to do it because I've chosen. I have chosen. And now I can't keep doing this anymore. I can't keep doing this nonsense of, finding the problem out there when it's not out there. This is over. I mean, it keeps coming back over and over. It's over. You don't have to fix it, change it, do anything. You just have to stop believing in it. Whew. Unbelievable.
I think that's what that last sentence in paragraph 3 meant too. Unless the mind actually sees the body as acting out its fantasies, like for a second I let up. I stopped pretending I was a body, and I was sort of aware I was a mind for a second, and then I was like, uh-oh, I better attack quick by increasing the projection of guilt on my poor body and make up all kinds of scenarios. I'll either get sick or I'll have somebody knock me down. I'll do something quick.
Or somebody else's body, or a germ, or the world, or a politician, or the weather. It doesn't matter what. Then there's a world out there. No, there's not a world out there. When are we going to get that? There is no world.
I keep coming back to that physicist John Wheeler, who made this short, sweet statement that really rings true. He says, "There's no out there out there."
Yeah.
And that's coming from a physicist, so it's like, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is it. Reality is here now.
Jennifer, you want to read paragraph 4? And Jesus took out the part where he said, in this, Jennifer's mind is clearly delusional.
I'm sorry. I totally lost in page. Which page is that?
385?
385. Which paragraph?
4.
4. Okay. Thank you. In this, the mind is clearly delusional. It cannot attack, but it maintains it can, and use what it does to hurt the body to prove it can. The mind cannot attack, but it can deceive itself. And this is all it does when it believes it has attacked the body. It can project the guilt. It can project its guilt, but it will not lose it through projection. And though it clearly can misperceive the function of the body, it cannot change its function from what the Holy Spirit established it to be. The body was not made by love, yet love does not condemn it and use it lovingly, respecting what the Son of God has made and using it to save him from illusions. Sorry, I don't have my reading glasses on, so.
No, you did good.
Yeah.
He was just paraphrasing what you were telling us before. Yeah. Paragraph 5, Lynn, you want to read that one? You're muted, Lynn.
All right. Jesus is going to pop the big question here.
How do you like being called an instrument of separation?
I know. That would be this. Would you not have the instrument of separation reinterpreted as a means of salvation and used for the purposes of love? Well, why not? What have I got to lose, right?
That's what Nick said Sunday night. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Would you not welcome and support the shift from fantasies of vengeance? Fantasies of vengeance. We all know what those are, right? Does anybody not know what a fantasy of vengeance is? Oh, man. To the release from them. Your perception of the body can clearly be sick, but project this not upon the body. For your wish to make destructive the body, what cannot destroy, because it's neutral, can have no real effect at all. What God created is only what he would have it be, being his will. You cannot make his will destructive. You can make fantasies in which your will conflicts with his, but that is all. You cannot project. Is he really saying that? He's saying project this not onto the body.
Well, I mean, we think we project. I mean, it's a puppet show, for God's sake.
Yeah.
If whatever these puppets are doing down here, we've projected the whole fantasy of story of sin, guilt, and fear, the fantasy of vengeance now, because this puppet here is going to wreak vengeance on this puppet in the name of
exactly.
in name of propagating the story, internal story of sin, guilt, and fear.
So all of this down here at the bottom, I'm pointing to the bottom of your chart. That is all nothing, nothing, nothing.
Well, yeah,
Nothing.
it's
Nothing.
images that we project a story of.
They're projected images that are fighting with one another and appearing to do something, but it's all fantasy.
And then it's worse, it's one puppeteer pretending he's each of these puppets. You know, right now we got 4 puppets on the screen, and one puppeteer pretending he's 4 different puppets talking to each other. And at best, the puppet story is about waking up, and at worst, it's a story of vengeance.
So really, I mean, it's insane to have our conversations on the puppet field having conversations about conflict on the puppet field with the other puppets. I mean, that's kind of what politics is, isn't it?
It's what everything is.
It's all nothing. It's so nothing.
On Sunday, we were looking at sickness, and it really hit me how much the reason for this poor little puppet down here to be sick isn't to get better. Or isn't, I mean, it's really always to blame this other puppet over here for making him sick, for somehow hurting him. I mean, this other puppet over here could be a germ, a disease, or whatever. But somehow this little puppet's being affected by this puppet. So the number 2 purpose for creating all this mess is exactly what the puppets are doing to each other. If I'm sick, it's not coming from some silly internal choice I made to be sick and then pretend I wasn't. It's coming from this other, I mean, that's what we believe. There's always another face of another puppet that we say the reason I'm sick is because this did this to me. The world was too harsh.
Yeah.
I became a victim of the world. not because I chose the story of sin, guilt, and fear, and now I'm projecting it on this poor other puppet and making it responsible for whatever I'm feeling as the other puppet. I mean, the whole purpose is to blame. That's why we get sick, to blame other people. It's why we do anything, actually, but especially when we get sick.
Did anyone catch the young lady from Scandinavia who made an impassioned plea about the environment to the UN?
Oh,
this week?
yeah.
And I was thinking, well, on the one hand, she's correct in stating that something needs to be done on the level of form within that paradigm,
Right.
and yet at the same time, it was like let's propagate the blame instead of getting to the root cause in the mind, which is the unconscious guilt.
She really went off at the UN. She said, "And we will not forgive you." I was like, "Whoa, Greta." Greta.
Exactly.
She went wild, boy.
Yeah. In this last paragraph, I just added, I'm kind of keeping a running list of, in the old ad years ago was, "This is your mind on drugs." I've got a "This is your body on ego"
Yeah.
list. And so I've just added, in addition to need machine, fence, rotting prison, puppet, and dream figure, I just added instrument of separation. That's a pretty formidable list of adversaries that we've made up for ourselves.
Engine of destruction.
Oh, thank you. I think I missed that
Engine
one.
of destruction.
That's the one I was looking for. Thank you. Okay.
And that's how we use it. I mean, that's the purpose to which we've put it.
Yep.
We can change the purpose for the body, fortunately.
Right. That's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty. We can change the purpose.
I'll read paragraph 6. I'm going to put in puppet instead of body. It is insane to use this poor puppet as a scapegoat for guilt, directing its attack and blaming the puppet for what you wished it to do. It is impossible to act out fantasies. The story of sin, guilt, and fear, and make the puppet responsible for it. For it is still the fantasies you want, separation, guilt, etc., blasphemy. For it is still these fantasies you want, and they have nothing to do with what the poor puppet does. The puppet doesn't dream of them, and they but make it a liability where the puppet could actually be an asset. Putting all this projection of sin, guilt, and fear on the puppet keeps the poor puppet from being used by the Holy Spirit to show us something else.
Yeah.
To show us what our true identity is beyond the body, beyond the puppet. For fantasies, this fantasy of sin, guilt, and fear in our minds have made your puppet your enemy. Now you think you're weak and vulnerable and treacherous, worthy of the hate that you invest in the puppet. But how has this served you? You have identified with this thing you hate. Another one, Bruce. The instrument of vengeance and the perceived source of your guilt. You have done this thing to a poor little puppet that has no meaning, proclaiming it to be the dwelling place of God's Son and turning it against him. Turning the puppet against the Son of God. This is the host of God that you have made, and neither God nor his most holy Son can enter an abode, a puppet that harbors hate, and where you have sown the seeds of vengeance, violence, and death. This thing you made to serve your guilt stands between you and other minds. That's what he's imploring us to look beyond the body, to see our minds are still connected, are still one. The minds are joined, but you do not identify with them. You identify with these poor little puppets on the screen. You see yourself locked in a separate prison, removed and unreachable, incapable of reaching out as being reached. You hate this prison. You hate this puppet you have made, and would actually destroy it. But you would not escape from it, leaving it unharmed without your own guilt being projected on the poor thing. Yeah.
And the ego revels and gloats in that. A few minutes ago, when the word blasphemy came up, I was thinking, well, the ego says, yeah, this is a blast for me.
Oh, BLASTFORME. Blast for me.
It thinks it's having a good time in its misery. I think Ken points that out so nicely in so many ways. Places where he points out that the ego really savors and relishes and almost rhapsodizes about the misery that it's made for itself, but only in an imagination. Right?
Bruce, you want to read paragraph 9, please?
Sure. The body is outside you, and but seems to surround you, shutting you off from others and keeping you apart from them, and them from you. It is not there. There is no barrier between God and his Son, nor can his Son be separated from himself, except in illusions. This is not his reality, though he believes it is. Yet this could only be if God were wrong. God would have had to create differently and to have separated himself from his Son to make this possible. He would have had to create different things and to establish different orders of reality, only some of which were love. When you spell it out like that, it's pretty crazy, huh? Yet love must be forever like itself, changeless forever, and forever without alternative. And so it is. You cannot put a barrier around yourself because God placed none between himself and you. That kind of reminds me of in the manual for teachers, the two themes that Ken points out is the trusting the Holy Spirit and then the shared interest. And then, there's no barrier between ourself and others in truth, and there's no barrier between ourself and the Holy Spirit, which is the source of our trust and comfort in undoing everything. The ego.
And, certainly from the ego's point of view, he's spelling out what the ego had to believe it did in order to pull all this off. So,
right.
What is it, line 6? To have separated, we believe we separated ourselves from God, and that was possible. We did believe we created different things, and we established different orders of reality, only some of which were love. I mean, he's spelling out exactly what we made up.
Yeah.
And believed it. Really.
And you could ask anybody on any street corner, do you believe that? And of course we do. We all do, right? Yeah.
And then, it's interesting. He's dealing with bodies, and he's using the metaphor of the body in paragraph 10, stretching out your hand. Well, if the mind had hands, it's yeah. Lynn, you want to read that 10, please?
You can stretch out your hand and reach to heaven. You, whose hand is joined with your brother's, have begun to reach beyond the body, but not outside yourself, to reach your shared identity together. Could this be outside you, where God is not? Is he a body? And did he create you as he is not, where he cannot be? You are surrounded only by him. What limits can there be on you, who he encompasses? Mind within a mind. You are, a mind within the mind of God.
In the next paragraphs, he's trying to describe as best as he can, because it's really a wordless place, this experience of moving beyond the body into an experience of being a mind and being connected already with other minds, one mind joined as one. So he says everyone has experienced what he would call a sense of being transported beyond himself. This feeling of liberation far exceeds the dream of freedom sometimes hoped for in special relationships, but don't really work. It is a sense of actual escape from limitations, from believing we're a puppet, from believing we're a body. If you will consider what this transportation really entails, you will realize that it is a sudden unawareness of the body and a joining of yourself and something else in which your mind enlarges, seemingly enlarges, to encompass it. It becomes part of you as you unite with it. Call it Jesus, call it our higher self, call it the Christ, call it, our brother's true reality. It becomes part of you as you unite with it. And both become whole, as neither is perceived as separate, neither is perceived as special. What really happens is that you have given up the illusion of a limited awareness and you've lost your fear of union. It's an interesting idea. We didn't even know we were afraid of union, but we've lost our fear of it. The love that instantly goes back to, as much as projection is instant, love instantly takes its place once we let go of the projection. The love that instantly replaces it extends to what has freed you and unites with it. And while this lasts in this holy instant, you are not uncertain of your identity, and you would not limit your identity. You have escaped from fear to peace, asking no questions of reality. It's more like insulting reality and insisting reality is not reality. Asking no questions of reality, but merely accepting it. You have accepted this instead of the body, and have let yourself be one with something beyond it. Simply by not letting your mind be limited by your body, by your belief in it. And then he goes on, this can occur regardless of the physical distance that seems to be between you and what you join with, regardless of your respective positions in space, regardless of your differences in size and seeming quality. Time itself in this holy instant is not relevant. Time and space just go out the window. It can occur with something past, present, or anticipated. The something can be anything and anywhere, a sound, a sight, a thought, a memory, even a general idea without specific reference. Yet in every case, you join it without reservation because you love it and would be with it. And so you rush to meet it, letting your limits melt away, suspending all the laws of the puppet, all the laws your body obeys, and gently setting them aside. It's a great description of the holy instant and letting go and not being afraid anymore.
We even get a little hint of that with our Zoom meeting right now, because I mean, we appear to be, these separate things, and even in different continents, different time zones, different bodies, but just we're all this one being, sharing this experience to the degree that we allow it.
The new message of the puppet show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds me, today's lesson was so perfect with what we just read. Let all things be exactly as they are. And as we were reading, it says, you've lost your fear. You have escaped from fear to peace, asking no questions of reality, but merely accepting it.
Like why or how come or how did I leave heaven in the first place?
No doubting, no question. We just let everything be as it is. Wow, great.
Jennifer, you want to read or you want to not read?
Sorry, I'll pass without my glasses.
Okay. So as a closing, Bruce, you want to read paragraph 14, and then we'll actually go to the closing meditation.
Sure. It is possible because you want it.
Meaning the holy instant.
Yeah, exactly. The sudden expansion of awareness that takes place with your desire for it is the irresistible appeal the holy instant holds. It calls to you to be yourself within its safe embrace. There are the laws of limit lifted for you, to welcome you to openness of mind and freedom. Come to this place of refuge where you can be yourself in peace. Not through destruction, not through a breaking out, but merely a quiet melting in. For peace will join you there, simply because you have been willing to let go of the limits you have placed upon love, and joined it where it is and where it led you, in answer to its gentle call to be at peace.
All right. And as a closing meditation, I thought we could do tomorrow's lesson. And that's lesson 269. And it's on page 430 in the workbook. And this lesson is really preparing us for what's coming up in the next series of 10 lessons. What it means to have an experience of the holy instant where we reconnect with the Christ, with our true identity. And then the way to make that happen is in paragraph 4 and 5 on page 431, is that we're willing to see the face of Christ beyond the face of the puppet, beyond the face of the body. So my sight goes forth to look upon Christ's face, the title of lesson 269, instead of the face of the puppet. Instead of the face of my puppet, instead of the face of your puppet, I'm willing to see beyond those faces to the face of Christ, which is really his way of describing the holy instant. And in line 2, he says, and that becomes the way to show me my mistakes, that I've mistaken bodies as our true reality. And then it transcends in line 4, it transcends all those illusions, all these bodies that I've made up. Being willing to see the face of Christ in my brother. Being willing to see beyond my perceived judgment of him, what he's done wrong, what he's done right, how he's affected me, etc., etc., etc. So Lynn, you want to read lesson 269 and then we'll get quiet.
Sure. My sight goes forth to look upon Christ's face. I ask your blessing on my sight today. It is the means which you have chosen to become the way to show me my mistakes and to look beyond them. It is given me to find a new perception through the guide you gave to me and through his lessons to surpass perception and return to truth. I ask for the illusion which transcends those that I made. Today, I choose to see a forgiven world in which everyone shows me the face of Christ and teaches me that what I look upon belongs to me, that nothing is except your holy Son. Today, our sight is blessed indeed. We share one vision as we look upon the face of him whose self is ours. We are one because of him who is the Son of God, of him who is our own identity.
And those on this side of the world, the seeming stage called the world, have a great evening. And those on the other side, of the world. Have a great day. Puppet-free day.
Hallelujah. Yeah,
Thank
puppet
you.
free. Puppet free. Yay.
Changing
Thank
off.
you. That was very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.